we have got to talk about Disney World's brand new Star Wars hotel. The 2-night immersive experience, the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, is technically launching today, and I previewed it last week, but we are getting into the nitty-gritty about this experience. I already did a full experience blog taking you along the story with me, but we are getting down and dirty, doing some analysis, talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, the controversy, and there's been a lot of controversy that comes with the Starcruiser. Hopefully, this will help answer your biggest questions. Do I have to like Star Wars? What's blue shrimp taste like? Can I go outside? And the big one, is it worth the high price tag of $5,000 to $6,000? Just so you know, this video is going to be spoiler free. If you would like to see some of the spoilers, see some of the adventure, please go watch my full experience review where I take you along for the 2 nights with me. But this video, we're talking about controversy, we're answering questions, some hot takes. Also, as you watch this, I'm getting ready to board, or I've already boarded, the inaugural sailing, which we paid for. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing the difference between the media experience and the paid guest experience, and I'll report back if there is any. As a little background, the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser has been met with tons of controversy before it even opened. The experience is incredibly expensive, with rooms ranging from $4,800 to $6,000 for the experience. Now, granted, that's not a per person cost, that is a room cost. And of course, the more people you put into the room, the cheaper it gets per person. But the rooms are small. We'll get more on that later. With that expensive price, you are going to get entrance into Disney's Hollywood Studios for an excursion on Batuu, where you will have Lightning Lane expedited access to both Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run and Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. All your food is included on board, as well as all your non-specialty drinks. Specialty mocktails and alcohol are extra charges while on the ship. There are a few other extra charges, but basically think of it like a cruise ship model where you pay a flat rate and pretty much everything is included. But the main thing that you need to know about the Star Wars hotel before we get into the rest of this is that it's not even really a hotel. It is not a hotel where you go sleep at that's themed to Star Wars and then you go to the Magic Kingdom during the day. You could, if you wanted to, technically. It's a 2-night immersive murder mystery style giant escape room that you are actively a part of. Before we get into it too much, I do want to note that I was an invited guest of Disney Parks to go on the full experience for 2 nights. As always with our reviews, being an invited guest does not influence our honesty. We are going to be unbiased and truthful because we know more than anything else, this is an incredibly expensive experience, and we want to give you the answers you need so you can decide if this is something that you would like to do with your family. I also want to note that while Disney may invite me to experience something, they never pay me and they never have any influence in anything that we write. We are not required to write all positive things. Disney didn't give me catchphrases to say. Everything that's coming out of my mouth is truthfully based on my experience aboard the Starcruiser. I also want to note that often at media events, media get to do things that normal guests wouldn't, whether it be special treats, whether it be special souvenirs. We don't cover that stuff. None of that happened aboard the Starcruiser, but as a general rule, if Disney does a great dinner buffet, I will ask if a guest can do this. If the answer is no, why would I show it to you? So I just want to put that out there. I want to be open and honest, completely transparent as far as what the rules are and how we cover media events. I go into every single day on this job, whether it be a media event or not, looking to see how I can improve your experience and answer your questions about going to Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando. Media events and what trips aboard the Starcruiser are no exception. All right, let's get into one of the biggest questions. Do you have to like Star Wars to go on the Galactic Starcruiser? Do you even have to have seen Star Wars before? What if I drag my spouse who does not care at all about Star Wars with me, but I've been watching since 1977? Are we both gonna have a good time? My answer to this is no. It does not matter if you like Star Wars or not. I found that the most important factor to enjoying your experience upon the Galactic Starcruiser is not whether or not you like Star Wars, it's how much you're willing to involve yourself in the activity. When Disney said this was an immersive experience, I had no idea how much they meant, but I am talking a truly 2-day immersive experience. Have you been to a murder mystery party? Can you imagine going to one of those for 2 days? If that sounds fun to you, this Starcruiser might be for you. But it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, that it was Star Wars. It probably helped me buy in a little bit more that it was a universe I was familiar with. And sure, if it was Harry Potter themed, I'd probably be losing my mind. But at the end of the day, the most important involvement was how immersive it was, what the technology was like, and how good the storytelling and characters were. It honestly could have been any theme, and I would have bought in. It could have been Team Yellow versus Team Blue, good guys versus bad guys, and I would have been involved in the story. So no, I don't think you need to be a Star Wars fan to enjoy this. Sure, it will help if you're a Star Wars fan because there are some subtle touches like the names of dishes, Easter eggs, things like that on board that are curated for the diehard Star Wars fans. But as far as the overall experience goes, I think having a minimal knowledge or at least a working knowledge of good versus bad, that's all you really need. There are cool details about the ship itself, and there are some Easter eggs from the films and shows kind of tucked in places. But one of the coolest ones that I found was in the cargo room. There's two little crates, and they've got or two cages, and they've got all kinds of stuff in it. And one of them, it kind of looks like an ice cream maker. You know what I mean. One of the biggest criticisms of the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, besides the price, we'll get to that, is that the ship looks cheap and that it's brand new characters. Let's start with that infamous promo. A few months ago, Disney released a promo aboard the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, and they took it down 6 days later. Why? Because the internet went wild. People said it looked cheap. They said it looked plastic. They said it didn't look realistic. People were furious to the point that Disney literally pulled it off the internet. I can tell you firsthand, it does not look cheap. It looks very far from cheap. The teams at Lucasfilm and Disney Imagineering got together. They looked at literally hundreds and hundreds of stills and photo clips, and they did their best to make that as realistic as possible. They went as far to do things like use materials that they used on the sets. They made sure that the ratios of the monitors were the same as the ratios of the monitors in the movies and not the 16:9 ratio that most screens are in our human life. The best comparison I can give you is if you've been aboard Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, what it feels like to sit in the chess room, or you've been in Star Wars Rise of the Resistance when you are inside Kylo Ren's ship. If that feels cheap to you, then this will probably feel cheap to you. But if you're like me, those things feel incredibly realistic, like I'm walking on a movie set, and that's how the Starcruiser felt to me as well. So I personally didn't think it looked cheap. I think it looked like it came out of Star Wars. Now let's talk about the characters. A lot of Star Wars fans are very mad that this takes place between episodes 8 and 9 during the Rey and Kylo Ren saga and not during the original trilogy. I understand that. That's a lot of the same backlash that Galaxy's Edge got. People want Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. They don't want the new characters. They want the ones that they grew up with, falling in love with. But that's not how it is on either the Starcruiser or in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I didn't realize this either until I was talking to some of the Imagineering folks, is that they developed Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser in tandem. These storylines were not shoehorned into each other. They go together. In fact, there have been Easter eggs in Galaxy's Edge for 3 years that no one noticed or understood because they related to things going on in the Starcruiser. The entire mission aboard Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run means something completely different when you are a Starcruiser passenger than when you are a regular day guest. It's still fun, it doesn't change, it's the same mission. But why you're stealing that coaxium for Hondo has another layer when you are a Halcyon passenger. So I understand if you grew up watching Star Wars, you want the experience that I get when I go to Diagon Alley at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, where I walk in and I see exact moments that I fell in love with on screen and on the page. I get to live through things that I saw. But that's not what this is. If that's going to be a deal breaker for you, the fact that it's not Darth Vader, the fact that it's not Luke Skywalker, if you can't get past that, I don't know what to tell you. It's not those characters. Also, people were upset that instead of even using Rey as the main character, or Chewbacca as the main character, Disney introduced a whole slew of other characters that nobody had heard of and were not in the Star Wars canon. I, as part of my job, knew vaguely who these characters were because I had them presented to me at the Destination D23, and I literally looked at my friend and was like, I don't care. I appreciate that they did all this backstory. I don't care about a single one of these people. Oh, I cared. The minute you get involved in the story, I started caring. I bonded with these people. Now, Lucasfilm and Disney are in a rock and a hard place because they want to please the fans, and there's sometimes no way to please the fans. If you give them Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, you already know how the story unfolds. So it's very rigid in what kind of create your own adventure you want to do, because let's be honest, some Star Wars fans are going to be mad when Luke Skywalker's not behaving the way that they expect him to behave because he's in this ever-changing, immersive, and adaptable storyline. By having characters that you do not know, it's twofold. One, now you and your spouse who doesn't care about Star Wars, you're coming in on an even playing field. You didn't have to know their whole backstory, their whole history to interact with the characters. You get presented the information same as everybody else. And number two, because you don't know this character's story in the canon of Star Wars, you get to help create that adventure. You don't know where this person's allegiances really lie. We all know where Luke Skywalker and Anakin and their allegiances lie. We've seen it play out, but you don't know where Sammy the mechanic's allegiances lie. And that's the beauty behind having unknown new characters. I loved having new characters. I went in thinking, I kind of wish I was going to interact directly more with like Rey, and it didn't matter. Now, there are characters you know and love that do pop up from time to time, and it makes it special and exciting when you see Chewbacca or he comes and plays Sabacc with you. But the main story is moved forward by these new characters, and they truly do a great job. You know what? You know who can explain this better than I can? Let's talk to Matt Martin, who's part of the creative team over at Lucasfilm, who I had the chance to interview, and he gave me some very candid answers about working on this and developing this, and Star Wars fans.
The first thing is that we decided that we wanted to tell this sort of cruise ship experience, and in that, you know, there were obvious characters that we needed to include. The cruise ship has to have a captain, it has to have a cruise director, it needs to have entertainment. So I think a lot of that was brought, you know, led to us wanting to have those types of characters. In addition to that, when you have new characters, no one knows what their story is going to be. So having a story that's set between two of the films, we have these characters where anything can happen to them. And as a guest, you're interacting with them, and your interactions will actually influence what happens to them. So, you know, we do have some classic famous characters in there as well that are kind of our big heroes, but being able to interact with new characters and learn their stories firsthand is just kind of a special experience you can really only get here. There's just something really meaningful about meeting a character and being in the space with them for, you know, 2 nights where they know your name, they know your affiliation, and they can bring you along on their journey, and you can sort of bring them along on your journey. And it's something that you can only experience here.
And last question, do you think Star Wars fans will be happy?
I mean, they're Star Wars fans, so it's always, you know, a tough crowd to please, but I really do think they will be happy. And from the Star Wars fans that I've met that have had an opportunity to go on this so far, they seem ecstatic. We like to say that we designed this to be not just for Star Wars lovers, but people who love Star Wars.
I do want to point out that I talked to several Star Wars only media outlets. These are people that have been covering Star Wars content only for decades, and they loved it. So I think being a Star Wars fan can be a huge plus, but you need to be open to new characters and new experiences in the galaxy that you love, and not expect it to be reliving things you've seen in the movies that you love. Now, this next one is a little bit of a hot take, and I'm gonna explain what I say because this sentence is gonna make you gasp. The worst parts of Disney World are fixed at the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser. It's not hot, it's not crowded, and it's not complicated. Let's be honest, besides how much it costs, those are the worst things about going to Walt Disney World, and all 3 of those problems are gone on the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser. Let's start with it's hot. We all know traveling to Orlando 10 and a half months out of the year is miserable for a lot of people. It's incredibly hot and humid in here. The temperature is well up in the 90s a lot of the time, and the humidity is 170,000%. It is very, very hot in Orlando. You know where it's not hot? Inside air conditioning. You know what the entire Starcruiser is? Inside air conditioning. I didn't even realize that this was such a perk until our back to excursion day. And I was like, why am I sweating? And it was because I'd been inside for a whole day before. Now, one thing a lot of people asked is, does being inside the whole time, do you feel claustrophobic? Does it feel like you're in a prison? Can I leave? For me, I never once noticed that I had been inside the entire time. They have it well lit in there. You are doing so many things. And it just didn't feel like I was trapped. It didn't feel tight. It didn't feel constricting. It didn't feel like I was trapped inside at all. There also is something they call the climate simulator, which simulates the outdoors perfectly. It's a very good simulator, AKA it's an outdoor patio. So if you really do want some fresh air, you can go out there, and it's very lovely. It was never crowded when I went out there. There's fans, benches, plant life. It's muggy out there though, because you're in Orlando, but if you desperately need a minute outside, you can go there. And if you truly, truly need to go outside of the whole experience, if you are a smoker, if you need to get something out of your car, you can talk to a guest services cast member and they will take you down the transport pod and outside and then escort you back up when you're ready to go back inside. You're not really trapped there. But truly, I never once thought about the fact that I hadn't seen sunlight, which is saying a lot for an all indoor experience. Let's talk about crowds. Disney World is notoriously crowded, especially recently. It's been unseasonably crowded with wait times at parks like Hollywood Studios well over 100 minutes consistently. It is very, very, very busy, especially during time like holidays, summer, spring break. It is busy at Walt Disney World and it is crowded at Walt Disney World. It is not busy and crowded aboard the Galactic Starcruiser. There's only 100 rooms on board, so averaging kind of how many people might get in a room, you're looking at around 350 to 400 people approximately a sailing. And there are moments where it feels crowded. There are big events that happen in the atrium, so everyone's gonna be together, but it never once felt like Disney fireworks where you're like, feel like you can't move. The other location that might get crowded at times is that Sunlight Lounge. It's the only lounge in the experience, and it does get a little crowded maybe right after both dinners, which are usually done around 9:30, 10 o'clock. It might be a little bit crowded. I thought it was less crowded than I expected. I expected to have to fight to get on that hollow sabacc table because there was only one hollow sabacc table on the whole ship and it can only seat 4 people. I never once had to wait for more than a round. A lot of times it was like open. So I think as people get more involved in their missions, and this is certainly something you'll see more on day 2 rather than day 1, because everyone's all excited and the initial event happens and everyone's still all together. But as the missions go on, as you have dinners, there's split dinners, there's dinner 1 and dinner 2, so that splits everybody up. You'll notice that it's really not crowded. Another great perk of it not being crowded is the cast members get to know you personally. I had some of the best Disney service I've ever had aboard anything in a park, on a cruise ship, on the Galactic Starcruiser. It's because it's so small, the cast members who are part of the story as well learn your name, they learn what you like, they might ask how your dinner was. If you don't do the captain's table for dinner, you should be seated at the same table both nights. And we had friends that when they sat down for the second night, the drinks were already there that they had ordered the night before. It's very like a cruise line in that way. And because it's such a small, intimate experience, the crew really can go above and beyond and personalize your stay. The cast members are far and away one of the best parts of this experience. And last but not least, it's uncomplicated. Let's be honest, we all love Disney World, but it is very, very complicated to plan a vacation there right now. You have to book dining reservations 60 days out. Genie Plus is a very confusing system. You gotta know what you're gonna rope drop and then where you're headed next. There's transportation to figure out. It's very complicated. You can't just show up to Disney World and have everything happen around you. But you can do that on the Galactic Starcruiser. Besides the plan of spending a lot of money to book your room and then maybe some more money on board for expensive cocktails and souvenirs, you don't have to plan anything. Everything is mapped out on your app. There's an itinerary both days, and only a few things are required. And even then, if you truly don't want to go to lightsaber training, no one's gonna make you. But we encourage you to do your research, watch our videos, figure out, hey, maybe I would like to learn how to play sabacc, or you know what, Rylac dance lessons sound really fun. And then you just figure out what time those are in the app and you show up. You don't have to book anything in advance. You're good to go. It is very, very unstressful in that way, and the opposite of what a lot of Disney vacations are like now. All that said, it is a very long and exhausting experience. I came home and I was exhausted. I think it would be very hard to go from this experience to multiple days in the theme park, where again, it is now gonna be hot, it's gonna be noticeably crowded, and you're already exhausted for doing a fully immersive 2-night experience. But I know a lot of people are gonna book this on the tail end or as the beginning of their Disney trip, Plan a resort day if that's what you're gonna do between the Starcruiser on either end, so you have a day to like a little bit. Now let's talk about one of the biggest cons of this experience, and that's your room. Well, that's the size of your room. It does look very cool. It looks cooler in person than it did on promo shots I had, which is kind of, like I said, true about the entire ship. It's very spacey. The window in particular looks horrible on camera because it's really reflective when you try and film it, but I promise it looks much cooler in person. The room is very cool. Now I'm just talking about the standard room. I was in a room that sleeps 5. The standard room sleep 4 or 5, and then there are a couple suites on board as well. But when I talk about this expensive price, we're talking one of the standard rooms. Now in the room that I was staying in, you had a bed, you had a pull down single bed, and then you had the infamous space bunk beds. You also had a small bathroom with a shower, toilet, sink area, a little hallway with a little mirror, one very small hanging closet, and one small shelved closet. These rooms are not big at all. And the reason they're doing that is because it's like a cruise. Have you been on a cruise? Your room's not very big there either, because they expect that you're out doing different activities throughout the day. And also on a cruise ship, they have limited literal space because it's a boat in the ocean. But this is not a boat in the ocean. This is literally on land. So I don't know why the rooms weren't made just a scooch bigger. Now, I would say, I think if you had 1 or 2 people in the rooms, they wouldn't feel that bad. But considering you can sleep 5 in these rooms, and you might want to try and cram 5 people in there to make the cost a little bit more manageable, it's gonna be snug. I will also say I was very, very busy. I was very rarely in my room. The most amount of time I was in my room was at like 2 o'clock in the morning when I was in my space bunk bed, uploading video content from my laptop and watching Golden Girls on the space TV. Because yeah, you can watch whatever you want. It's very jarring. Speaking of the bunk beds, everybody wants to know if they're comfortable or not. First things first, I fit in the bunk bed, no problem. My coworker Quincy fit in the bunk bed, no problem. She's like 5'9", I'm 5'7". I fit in there, no problem. Someone taller than me could fit in there as well. I don't think if you're like a basketball player, like for the NBA, you'd be great up there. But I think through, an over 6 foot human being would probably fit in there just fine. Were they comfy? They weren't great. The bed was comfy in the sense that I liked being all cozy in my little top bunk. And it's definitely meant for children to sleep in the bunk beds based on the size of the ladder. These hips don't lie. And I had to turn sideways to get out of the bunk gracefully. And I never once got out of the bunk gracefully. But the space is cozy. Like I could sit up pretty much straight up and down, and it felt fun sitting up in there and like watching my TV and sitting up in there. But the mattress itself is like a nylon mattress. It reminded me if you're gonna go sleep in your friend's college dorm on their futon, or at a daycare when it's nap time and they pull out those mattresses and lay them down for all the kids. That's what the mattress felt like. And the blanket you're given is actually more like a sleeping bag. It doesn't zip up, but it also closes at the bottom. So you kind of like shimmy your way in. It's like a half sleeping bag that you're space camping, I guess. The bed did seem more comfortable. The bigger issue for me in this room was the lack of outlets. Now, I understand I was on a media event where we had 4 laptops and 4 cameras and phones and battery packs, and we had a lot of stuff to charge, right? But the outlets are few and far between. Very few of them are just direct USB ports. Most of them are 3-prong outlets, and there's none in the bunk bed. Like, your kid has a tablet too they probably want to charge. I luckily had a 6-foot cord that I could plug into one of the nightstand outlets and hang it up my phone up there. So that to me is a design flaw, that there's not a USB port up where the bunk bed is. There's a little light up there, so they had the ability to put electrical up there, but they didn't. So that's annoying. Bring long cords. Another thing that I think could have been better in the room is your little robot, D309, she's your droid. She introduces herself and says she's there to help you, and she's very good AI. When she asks you questions, she does vary her response based on what you say. And I said some outlandish things to see how she would respond. But she's presented to you as gonna be like a Hey Google or a Siri type droid where you can ask her anything you want all day, but that's not what she is. She's only available if she sent you a message, and she's more of a story tool to move the story along, because things happen to D309, or Dot as we called her. And so she's a story element. She's not a hey Google. And she's cool because she's good AI, but I wished that she was a Google as well as a story element. All right, it's time for one of the hottest topics, blue shrimp. What do you eat in space, and is the food good? The food far surpassed my expectations, and y'all know I love eating. I expected the food to be very similar to that on Galaxy's Edge, which is fine as far as quick service goes, but outside of Ronto wraps and Katsaka's kettle, nothing on Galaxy's Edge really speaks to me. But I found the food far better than that. Breakfast and lunch are quick service and better in my opinion than most Disney quick service breakfast and lunch. And the dinner is very comparable to a good sit down restaurant at Walt Disney World and better than a lot of them. Plus the drinks aboard are much better than Oga's Cantina. There's a much more wide variety of sweet drinks like Oga's Cantina sweet juice based drink, but then they also have a lot of bourbon and whiskey based signature cocktails. So you have a much bigger range. They're also made to order as opposed to at Oga's where they're all pre-made and then the bartenders just pull a lever and fill up a cup. These are handcrafted cocktails, plus you can order earth drinks if you want. So if you just want a rum and coke, you can just order a rum and coke. The way I would describe the food is that a lot of it is familiar flavors presented in an unfamiliar way. Like that bubble waffle, grilled cheese, and that red fruit soup dipper. Red fruit is tomato. Bubble waffle, grilled cheese. It's a grilled cheese and tomato soup, and it was truly delicious. It blew me away because I did not have high expectations for that. So a lot of the food is like that, where it's something that you're familiar with, but just presented either with a weird space name or in kind of an unusual presentation, but the flavors will feel very familiar to you. If you're ever concerned about what something is, just ask the cast members, hey, do we have something like this on Earth? What would they call it? And they'll be able to tell you. The chefs researched hours and hours of Star Wars footage from the stories, from the films, from the shows. They chose ingredients, colors, and styles to make it feel like something from Star Wars. They would attach it to, oh, look at that plant we saw here. Look at this color we saw here. You know what? I'm gonna stop talking about it. I was able to speak to one of the head chefs, and this is what he had to say.
So I'm Bobby Rivera. I'm a chef de cuisine for concept development. And my role was to help research, create, taste, and bring the story that we're telling through our food and our dishes.
So how much research did you all do? How deep did you go into Star Wars lore?
This is over 3 years of work in front of us, and this is just a small fraction of all the food that we have to offer. Once we knew what the story for the Halcyon is, that's when we started developing dishes. That's when we started connecting ideas to specific characters or planets or maybe events that happen through the story. So when you eat any of our offerings, it's going to connect to something that maybe you did, maybe you saw, you heard, maybe something happened along the way in your journey, and it's going to be translated onto the food.
The key is that, and no matter where we are in Disney, we are catering to a broad group, right? And even at that, you think to yourself, what does the population want? And they want these really wow beverages, but then also they want some of those comfort items like an old fashioned, which now it is actually on the Starcruiser. It is called a pod chaser. It has its own backstory, which is super fantastic. First, I want to note this wonderful silver sphere that keeps that drink icy cold the whole time. But it has the flavors of caramel and has citrus as well. This in particular drink is known to be drink of choice for pod racers right before they go onto a race, and they say to the race.
Oh, well, that's a good toast to know.
Yes, absolutely.
Breakfast and lunch at the Corn of Corellia dining room are served cafeteria-style quick service. You get these trays that kind of have like Tetris blocks in it, and everything is pre-portioned out, and you kind of sit your trays down. But it's all you care to enjoy. So if you just want 10 portions of the tip yip and noodle cheese, which is chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese, go for it. You can have as much or as little as you'd like. There's also blue and green milk on tap. Now, the blue and green milk is not frozen. It's now milk consistency, and it comes out like a regular milk at a cafeteria. I didn't hate it though. There were plenty of different plant-based options as well, and I did talk to them about allergies and special diets, or even just preference. They are going above and beyond. They know how much money you spent to be here, and they're gonna accommodate. Talk to a crew member, talk to a chef. They'll be able to make something with you. They can make something and just keep an ingredient off. They can talk to you about allergies. They can whip you up something. They're very, very accommodating. The only downfall to that is it might take a little bit longer if you do have a special dietary concern. So I'd plan a little bit more wiggle room for your dining experiences. But overall, the food was very, very good. I do have a full food video coming where I'm gonna showcase over 100 different eats and drinks that I had aboard the Starcruiser, which as you can imagine would not fit into the original video. So stay tuned for that. And to answer everyone's question about the blue shrimp, I didn't love them, but in my defense, I also don't like shrimp-colored shrimp cocktail. That's all it is basically, a blue shrimp cocktail. They dye it blue using butterfly pea flower tea. So it's a natural herbal tea they use to dye it blue, and then it's basically a fancy space shrimp cocktail. I had friends on board that loved it, but if you're like me who doesn't like earth shrimp cocktail or cold crustaceans in general, this may be a pass. Your little ones may not love this experience. For starters, they may not be able to do everything. Lightsaber training has an age limit of 7. You have to be at least 7 years old to do that. And your little ones probably won't follow along with what's happening around you. It's a whole immersive theater situation, which heavily relies on you using a data pad, which they may not have their own phone or be able to understand or read what's going on in the data pad. It involves you going up to characters and talking to them, which your little kids may not want to do that. Plus, a lot of the big events happen late at night because everybody has to be done at dinner. I'm talking 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and that's way too late for a lot of little ones. There are some activities for kids like mini droid racing, but there's not a lot for them to do if they're not going to actively involve themselves in a story, and it may be too complicated or scary for the kids to do that. And unlike the adults, it's not like they can go play sabacc and drink in the lounge because they don't want to go on a secret mission. So I would make sure you know your kids. I had friends on board that had kids that absolutely loved it. They were involved in everything. It was like the best time of their life. But if you've got really little ones, like 4, 5, and under, this may not be the experience that you want to do. And now for a segment I call Rapid Fire Q&A. These are some of your most popular and frequently asked questions on our social media channels, on our original YouTube video, and I'm gonna answer them really quick before we get to the big one. What happens if Rise of the Resistance breaks down during your day to Batuu? You know what, that's a great question because Rise of the Resistance breaks all the time. There is a strong chance that it will be broken for part of your day in Batuu. It was for me. I talked to them, they said that if that happens, make sure you talk to guest services on the ship or the crew members that greet you when you're in Batuu. They will do their best to compensate. It is going to vary experience by experience and situation by situation what makes sense for you. What about lightsaber training? What if that breaks? And that is a possibility. There were preview groups where lightsaber training broke. Of course, Disney hopes that doesn't happen. They're gonna do everything they can to let you do lightsaber training aboard the ship. But if that does happen in a rare occasion, it's a lot harder to compensate someone for lightsaber training breaking on a ship that is exclusive to that sailing, as opposed to a ride in a theme park that they can just give you a lightning lane for. I did talk to some guest services managers and they said that again, they are trying to make sure you have the perfect experience. So they're gonna do everything they need to do, whether that be add people to other classes, maybe have an extra class late at night once they get things up and running. They're gonna do their absolute best to make sure that you get to do everything that you'd like to aboard the ship. What happens if you don't get invited to a mission that you'd like to attend? Let's say you watched a video and you saw something really cool that you definitely want to do, but it doesn't seem like you're getting invited. Or let's say you're on the ship and your friend goes off to do something cool and you didn't get invited to that mission. Or your friend got invited to do something cool and you want to go with them to that mission. Are you just out of luck because you're playing your adventure differently? Once again, I'm going to direct you to guest services. I had a long conversation with guest relations cast members on board the ship, and while nothing is guaranteed, they do have some magical powers. My advice to you, if your story is not playing out exactly as you'd like it to, go as early as you possibly can. The later you go, the less time there is to rectify the situation. Also, it usually works better if you play along on theme. Don't go in and yell, "My friend got invited to this mission and I want to go right now." It's not cool. Maybe instead say, my friend got invited to meet up with Wraith over at the bridge, and it seems like my transmission got lost because I was talking to Wraith earlier and he said I was supposed to be there as well. Or I have some information I'd like to tell Wraith. I think I could be beneficial on this mission. And the crew member will probably say something like, interesting. Well, I'm not supposed to do this, but if Wraith said it's okay, let me see your data band. I watched this happen on board when a dad took his kid up and his 2 kids got 2 different missions, and they made sure that they had all the missions together. It does take you out of the story a little bit to go ask and demand for certain things. And I had fun I had no idea any of the missions, so I had fun just bopping around and seeing what was happening. But I do understand if you've spent all this money and you know a certain thing is happening, or you hear a certain thing is happening and you want to be a part of it, don't be afraid to go talk to guest services. But as always, whenever I talk about this, be nice. I was told on board that they solve for yes. So if you ask them for something, they are going to do their best to have the answer be yes. This is an interesting one, and that's if the cast is trained in Star Wars. I was told that the cast is trained to understand the story of the Halcyon, and they're given a lot of creative freedom to run aboard the ship and create their own backstory and what planet they're from and interact with you. But one thing that's interesting is they may not know who Luke Skywalker is, because you see, in their universe, he's a historical figure. So the same way you might not know that much about Julius Caesar, they might not know that much about Mace Windu. The cast, I cannot talk about them enough. They were one of the best things on the ship. It is the creme de la creme of Disney cast members that were invited to come aboard and open up the Halcyon, and they are amazing. They are involved in the story. They have guest service that's second to none. They're awesome. So talk and get to know the crew members. Ask them what planet they're from. They play along and they are great. Cast members, we love you. Interesting question I got a lot. Can I just visit there as a day guest for a meal or a drink? No, you cannot. This is not like a normal Disney hotel where you can make a reservation at the restaurant even if you're not staying there and enjoy and go check out the hotel. This is a 2-night immersive experience that people are paying a lot of money for, and part of that lot of money is the exclusivity of going. So no, this is not somewhere you can visit unless you are going on the full adventure. Do you have to stay on Batuu during your day excursion to Galaxy's Edge? Yes, they chain you there. Stormtroopers will chase you off if you try to go to Toy Story Land. No, I'm just kidding. While they heavily encourage you to stay in Batuu, and I'm going to encourage you too, if you're paying for the Starcruiser experience, you want to do everything you can in Batuu that matches with the story. Use those lightning lanes that are good for any time during your day at Rise of the Resistance and Millennium Falcon. Do some missions, but nothing is stopping you from going to Toy Story Land, going to Rocket Roller Coaster or Tower of Terror. In fact, those dining credits will technically work at any of the quick service restaurants in the park. This one's a spicy question. Did Han and Leia really honeymoon on the Halcyon? Yes. There's even a honeymoon suite. And if you don't believe me, ask Lucasfilm.
There is actually.
Okay.
But we do know which room it was, and I'm sure you can probably ask when you book your journey, and you might be able to get that one.
Did Disney do it? Did they pull off a completely immersive experience? I want to say yes. It truly feels like you were immersed somewhere else. I was jarred when I'd get back to my room at night and open up my work computer and look at Slack, or open up my phone and look at Instagram. I was confused for a second. The day we went to Batuu, I was looking very confused at all the people wearing Mickey ears and dressed like normal humans, because pretty much everyone on board was in some kind of Star Wars-esque outfit, whether it be just like a harness like this, whether it be full cosplay, or even maybe just neutral colors. Most people on board were in theme. And if they weren't, I literally lost them out of my line of vision. There could have been someone wearing a sorcerer hat and a Goofy t-shirt, and I would not have paid them any attention. Now, I know that this is probably some people's biggest fear, that they are trapped aboard a ship with improv actors, but let me tell you, they were amazing. Now, this does go into my main overarching theory about this experience, that you have to buy into it in order to get a good result on how much you like it. But I found it very easy to buy in, and a lot of that credit goes to the actors. There was only one moment aboard the entire time where I was like, ooh, we made it a little too cheesy for me, and I was taken out of it because it was a little overdone. But the rest of the time, I completely believed everything. I was completely bought in. The story made sense to me. I knew what we were doing. The actors were amazing at controlling the chaos and involving you and involving the right people. And it really did feel like I was somewhere else and it felt longer than 2 nights. So yes, I do think Disney did it. I think they pulled off the immersive otherworldly experience. And last, but certainly not least, the biggest question that everybody's been asking for months, ever since this was announced, ever since they saw that price tag, is it worth it? Ultimately, in my opinion, the only thing that matters is how much you are willing to play this game and immerse yourself into this experience. It does not matter how much you love Star Wars. All that matters is your ability to buy into the story and immerse yourself into the adventure. That's it. To do this, when you get your magic band, tap it as soon as you can and start running those missions. Right after the muster drill, when all the characters are out, go find them, talk to them, engage. It is a dream for someone like me who's very extroverted and loves escape rooms and murder mystery parties and themed events. I'm also the kind of person that immerses myself in basically anything in a theme park. I love doing the wand magic at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Even though I've done it dozens and dozens of times, I still get excited when things happen because I used my wand. I still get teary on Rise of the Resistance because it's so immersive. I am very easily immersed into another world. So for me to buy into I was somewhere else, it happened very, very quickly. I don't think that's going to be the case for everyone else. And I know not everyone is as extroverted as I am. For a lot of people, going up to strangers and talking to them is literally their worst nightmare. But I don't want to discourage all introverts from going. You don't have to be as extroverted as I am to have fun and immerse yourself in the story. And Disney knew that. They knew that not everyone was going to run up and talk to a character as soon as they saw them. That's why you have the data pad. That's why you have the consoles, because you can start doing your missions that way. And maybe your data pad will send you to open up a room, and you open up a room you've never been into before. And then maybe a character comes in and you start talking. They want you to kind of, whether you are full in, whether you send a message on a data pad, get into the story, and that is going to be the most important thing. So in my opinion, the theme didn't really matter. Did it help that it's an IP I'm familiar with? Probably initially. I probably bought in a little bit faster because I'm familiar with the Star Wars universe. But ultimately, the story was well told, the missions were fun, the theme was everywhere, the tech was cool. If you have no interest in playing the game, if living in a 2-night escape room where you have to interact with strangers sounds terrible to you, or you're going to think this is entirely cheesy and over the top and ridiculous, then this is probably something that you are not going to get your money's worth. One thing to consider when you're figuring out if the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser is actually worth the cost is to figure out what you're actually paying for. If you take out the cost of food, the cost of lodging that you would likely be paying at Disney World elsewhere, the actual cost you're paying for the immersive experiences is a lot lower. Taking into account the average cost of a Disney breakfast buffet, a Disney lunch buffet, a family-style dinner, snacks, sodas, you're looking at over $600 for a party of 2. Then if you take out lodging at a comparable hotel, now when I say comparable, Disney's counting this in the deluxe category, even though it's not really a deluxe room. Now, a standard room at a deluxe hotel, say the Grand Floridian during a non-peak time of the year, is usually around $700. So if you look at that for 2 nights, you're pulling out another $1,400 or so dollars. You also have to keep in mind that you are technically getting park tickets. Granted, it's just a Hollywood Studios and it's not a whole park day, but that's over $100 per person. Plus you're getting Lightning Lane access to both Rise of the Resistance and Smuggler's Run, which would be additional costs from both the fancy ride for Rise of the Resistance and purchasing Genie Plus to get access to Smuggler's Run. You're also getting food on Batuu at Docking Bay 7, which again counts as part of the food. So when you pull out all of these things that you would be in theory paying for at a Disney vacation anyway, how much of the immersive experiences aboard the Starcruiser are actually costing you? Based on using these numbers, it's about $2,500 for a couple, or about $1,250, give or take, fast math, for a single person paying towards the immersive experience. That sounds like a lot of money, and it definitely is, but when you think about the fact that you've got often Broadway caliber actors interacting with you on a very real level for 45 hours, you are in a living, breathing movie set and interacting on this adventure, going to an escape room is usually like $45 a person, and that's for 1 hour. So you could make an argument that if you're just looking at the cost of paying to be a part of the experience, it's maybe more justified for you if this is something that you'd like to do. Then again, a lot of people don't stay at deluxe resorts when they visit Disney World. They don't eat at 3 sit-down restaurants a day plus a bunch of different snacks. So it's interesting to look at the math, and when you pull things out, it certainly makes the numbers look a little bit differently. There's gonna be a lot of people that $1,200-$1,300 per person for the immersive experiences. That's gonna be a no from them. I do want to just remind people that there's bad line dancing on all cruises, not just Star Wars cruises. If you've ever been on a cruise, it's all bad line dancing. There isn't a whole lot else to do other than be involved in this story. You can go to the Sublight Lounge and play sabacc, which is really fun, but it's not like when you go to a Disney theme park and you skip the parks for a day and sit at the pool. There's no pool. The whole point is to immerse yourself into the story, which for some people like me is an awesome thing, but for others, that sounds like a nightmare. All of that said, I had an amazing time aboard the Galactic Starcruiser. I had so much fun. I was sucked in. There were moments that made me cry, that involved characters I knew and these brand new characters I just met. There was action. It was awesome. I loved it, and I feel like I had the perfect experience aboard it because of how I played the game, because of the interactions I had. I loved it, and I will say that unabashedly. But I can love something and think the price tag is very, very steep at the same time. Those thoughts are not mutually exclusive. Even knowing how much fun I had and how much I love it, I have a hard time swallowing the price. While on board, I thought about how Alan Duckfist and I should do this because the three of us do a lot of escape rooms together and we always have a good time. But I thought about the fact that that would be about $2,000 each, and I could go on a really nice cruise or fly to Europe for $2,000. And it's really, really hard to swallow. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but I'm saying I'd really have to think about it. I think at the end of the day, after having the perfect experience that I just had on the Starcruiser, if I had paid my fair share of the bill, I think I would have been okay with how much I spent. I think I would have gotten my money's worth. But the problem is, it would have taken a lot of convincing to spend that money to begin with, even knowing how great of a time I had. But I do want to point out, I don't think the question should be, should I spend $5,000 on a week-long Disney vacation, or should I spend $5,000 on a 2-night Star Wars vacation? Because to call this a vacation is really difficult for me. In my opinion, it's more like, do I want to spend $5,000 on a week-long Disney vacation, or do I want to spend $5,000 on a 2-night Star Wars immersive experience? It's not really apples to apples. And ultimately, whichever one of those two things or anything else you could spend $5,000 on is going to be up to you which you prefer. Ultimately, the answer to this question is very hard. Is it worth it? Is something different to a lot of people. There's people that $6,000 is a drop in a bucket. There's people that save their whole life to go to Disney World for a week. There's people that love Star Wars but are going to be mad when it's not Luke and Leia. And there's people that love Star Wars but hate games. And there's people that have never seen Star Wars, but their dream would be to do a 2-day LARPing activity. Ultimately, if it's worth it, depends on you. Not only your budget, which is the number one factor, but your willingness to immerse yourself, buy into the story, and engage with the action around you. Hopefully that helped answer some of your questions about this Galactic Starcruiser, the most controversial thing Disney has done maybe ever. There's been a lot of topics. This has been a very hot topic, not only here at Disney World, but beyond. I hope this was helpful. Let us know what else you want to know about the Galactic Starcruiser down in the comments. I hope I answered some of your questions and gave you a better insight to what it's truly like aboard the Halcyon. If you haven't watched it already, please go watch my experience video where I take you along with me on the 2 nights. And until next time, friends, may your routes be clear.